Beyond the Wrench with jayg from WrenchWay.
Welcome back to Beyond the Wrench. My name is jayg and I am your host. Before we get started, if you enjoy listening to Beyond the Wrench, we would love it if you'd show us your love by rating the podcast 5 stars on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps us get our podcast out in front of other awesome shop owners, managers, technicians, and dealers just like you, so we can help improve, promote, and grow this amazing industry. And with that, today's guest is somebody that really has a passion for trying to grow this industry and make it better. And I'm excited to welcome Josh Arnold. Josh is a master technician at Toyota of Corvallis, and I had recently met Josh on a trip to Portland. I was out there doing a workshop for our amazing partners out at Toyota in the Portland region. And Josh and I got talking after I did my little spiel, my little presentation, and I found that he had a lot of great ideas and just a lot of great insight from the shoes of a technician. So welcome to the podcast, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks, Jay.
That's good. How's everything out in Corvallis?
We're staying busy. We had one of our technicians, our master technicians, switch careers recently. So we've been more busy than usual trying to cover for all the big shoes.
What did he go do?
He switched to IT.
Hearing that more and more,
Yeah.
It's something that I think we've got to be aware of in the industry as a whole. But so let's talk about you to start things off. Give us a little bit of your background.
Okay, so I have a little bit of a funny story how I got into the industry. I had just finished high school, and I had a program through Oregon that basically paid for half my college if I went to a community college. So I lived in Roseburg at the time, and UCC is a community college locally by. So I went through the list, and I kind of just ran my finger down, and I saw something called T10 Toyota at the time. And I had no idea anything mechanical knowledge. Like, I was the greenest you can get. Hadn't changed oil, didn't know how to pull a dipstick, all of that. But I looked into the program. It sounded really intriguing. I had done welding in high school, but they didn't have an auto shop program. So I was kind of always interested in it, just never got to pursue it. I went to interview, and I was just blatantly honest with the guy. I was like, look, I have never done any of this. I have no experience, but I want to try it and see how it goes. Luckily, the program was small, so they were taking just about anybody walking in the door at that point. And they gave me a shot. And the first 3 months were probably the roughest 3 months I've had in my entire life, trying to learn everything and catch up to some of these guys that have been in the industry 5+ years, had been Express Lube, and they knew how to do things. But once I had gotten to that, I came up to Corvallis, which is about 2 hours away. And I applied for a job here. And again, just blatantly honest, look, I don't know anything. I just want to learn. I'm really interested in becoming a master technician because I really always look for skill progression for a career. I really wanted a place to go, and I really wanted to get the highest level right out of the gate. So I sat down with Brian Carter, and he was a manager. And again, luckily, he's one of those guys that can kind of see the future and can read people pretty good. So he knew that I was driven for it, even though I didn't know what I was doing at all.
That's crazy. Well, I want to stop you before we go into your actual career as a technician. Yeah. And I want to ask, did you have options when you were coming out of high school as far as maybe going the 4-year route or going the 2-year route, and the financial aid kind of pushed you that 2-year route?
Yeah, so I did have an option to go to a college. I didn't have too bad of a GPA. I wasn't a 4.0 by any means, so I was like a 3.0 student. But I always liked working with my hands, and I had done a lot of drafting, and I found that I really didn't want a desk job. I just wasn't suited for it. I really wanted to stay busy and do something just physical and also a little bit of mental as well. I had been in computers a lot, so I knew I wanted something with a little bit of electronic base and a little bit of mechanical base, and that just kind of lined up perfectly. As far as like a 4-year college. It never really interested me. At the time, I knew that there was money in this industry. And luckily, the T10 website, I did thorough research before I jumped in on it. They laid out a plan saying, 40,000 this year, 60,000 this year, 100. And that's as soon as I saw that 100K, I was signed up. So,
well, but I think that goes to show the importance for all of you shops that are out there listening of painting a career path and showing the potential of the industry, and even knowing how cool of an industry this is. I think, one of the things that we talk a lot about in our content is the narrative that you oftentimes see on a Facebook or a Twitter or whatever, where you do have technicians out just bashing the industry as a whole. Yet here was a young person, a young, smart person that we were able to kind of show that career path and paint that picture for, and able to attract to our industry, and somebody that didn't have a history in this industry. I can't stress the importance of that enough, because it sounds like in your experience, that was something that really stuck out to you, and that was something that really drove you to kind of throw all your eggs into this basket.
Yeah. I'd say compared to a 4-year college, if you look at a 4-year college, they basically will say, you go and select your degree. They don't really set the path. So the biggest thing for me was that with that T10 website, what that did was, this is where I'm going to be in 5 years. I knew I liked that plant, and I liked that there was career growth and places to move up. And I found even now, I'm finding new opportunities, even now that I am at that master tech level, that there's just so many more branches in this company to go to and do different things. So it's been really great. I wouldn't change anything for it. That's for sure.
Well, look at your skill progression from when you started off as super green to being a master level technician, and what you can do now versus what you could do when you first started out. And you're not that old of a guy. I mean, to make that kind of a career progression in that short of time, and the skills that you've gained in that time, that's pretty damn impressive.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So now you get into the shop, you start working in the Toyota dealership. What was kind of your experience in coming into a shop?
So, like I said, super green, and usually, the shop guys, they don't like the guys out of school, especially like when they're just clueless, right? It can be a little frustrating, and sometimes
you're seeing the other end of that now.
Yeah, I definitely. And sometimes you're a little cocky because you got, you're working on a degree and everything like that. But they were pretty nice to me. But yeah, that first day, man, walking in this big fancy building and trying to figure out like the difference between school and actually doing the job, so big. So anytime we have guys now that come out of school, I'm very blunt with them, and I just say, look, I know you guys have all this knowledge and everything, but you don't know anything about doing it on a daily basis. But luckily, we did have a couple guys that picked me up under their wing, under their shop. After a while, it takes some time. And Alex DePaz was my mentor, and he was a dual master tech. So we're actually a split store. We're Toyota and Subaru, which is pretty rare. But it's also super cool because they're both Japanese, and it allows that progression to go even further. Like I can be a master tech in both brands, which is awesome. So anyway, he took me under his wing and he started to show me. And my program was a little unique, where I'd do 3 months up here, and then I'd go back to school for 3 months, and then, rinse and repeat for 2 years. So I really got to start to learn and progress, and just learn, like I said, how much I didn't know from school coming in the door. After I'd finished up my school and graduated, since I was a Toyota-specific college, I got to jump to a certified technician right out of the gate. So that saved me about 2 years of time there. And then the next 3 years was my learning in the dealership, because I became a line technician. I got all of my ASEs, including the L1, which Toyota is huge on. And it really helps jump you to the next level. And then those 3 years, like I said, I was just grinding away. I personally, since I was flat rate, I worked 12 hours. I was big on, I wanted to make it happen. I wanted Master Tech. That was my singular goal. And luckily, I was able to get it done with the support of my manager, who's, like I said, he's all about training, getting you evolved to the next level and everything like that. So
that's a true leader right there. And I think that's what we need more of in the industry. Going back to your experience coming into the shop, is there anything that you could see, hindsight's 2020, but anything that we as shops could do to make that transition easier? Or is it just kind of you're going to get a splash of cold water on your face regardless of what you do?
I think the cold water was kind of good because it definitely sets the stage for you, and it's always fun to poke around on the new guys and everything like that. It's just how a shop works. As far as like, can you make it any better? I think just accepting that someone doesn't know everything. Sometimes that's hard coming from a master tech because a lot of these guys, 10 plus years in the industry, they forget what it's like to walk in and be green. And luckily, since I'm so new and I'm still a master tech, I'm training technicians now. And sometimes I got to stop myself and realize that these guys are me and they just don't know. And it can be frustrating from your side because you're like, I know how to fix it right now immediately. And you got to let them struggle and work through and have that progression themselves. And so I really like working with the younger guys now. I like to try to train them. And it's funny to see the other side of it, truthfully. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing what a few years will do under your belt. But give me an idea when you first got in, how hard was it to hold yourself back from wanting to take on like the big jobs, right? Because I think a lot of times what happens is a tech gets in, and whether they're starting in a lube bay or you hear stories from all over the place. Start off as a porter, start off in the lube bay, start off. Where did you actually start?
I started, I was over in express maintenance for a very short time. But like I said, with my lack of knowledge at the time, I wasn't really useful in that position. So I got very lucky at my shop where I got to jump to shadowing a technician right off the bat. And that was just because I had no hands-on experience. So I really had to be guided through it. Basically, if they let me loose on a car, who knows what would have happened. It was good and bad. The hands-on experience is definitely big. And like I said, when I finally made that switch to flat rate, the improving my hands-on ability is really where, I had to put a bunch of time in because nuts and bolts was always the hard part for me. I got electrical pretty easily. I got all the theory behind it, but it was just the nuts and bolts. And I see that in some students coming in nowadays. You really got to change your onboarding system to the person you're dealing with, because some guys, they know how to do it. It's just they've been doing it their whole life, or they're just naturally good at it. Some guys, they're like me, where they're just all theory based and they get that side of things, but the hands on, they'll strip bolts, it's just, you got to learn to cater to who you're training and who you're trying to progress.
What was your feeling on flat rate before you went flat rate?
So I didn't really know, but when I was told I was going to go flat rate, I was super excited because the little bit that I did know about it was basically you can make more money than the hours that you're there. It also allows you to do excessive time, which for me in my position was much needed because I needed that learning experience, and it allowed me to come in and stay late. Whereas if you're in an hourly shop, you're kind of limited by how much overtime they can afford. So I, on the first part of my career, took on all of the hard jobs. So any job I wasn't comfortable on, as soon as I switched flat rate, that's the job I was doing. I took all the warranty work from the master techs, which they were grateful
loving.
For. They loved it. And I lost money for about 2 years in the industry. I wasn't making time, but I was still making enough to live, and I didn't have a lot of expenses at the time. I was single, young, and just living by myself. So I just took every job as a learning experience. And that was something that Carter had laid out to me from the very beginning, was just any job you're scared of, jump on it like a live grenade and take it.
That is such a great response to that, and such a unique insight for a young person to have the maturity to even think that way. And that's a bit of advice that I give a lot of young techs. And I hope every young tech that's out there is listening to this right now, because that is so important to understand. And yes, it's easy to make a dive at the money and trying to go directly for the money. But if you sacrifice that 1 or 2 years or 3 years or whatever it takes to do, like, make those sacrifices that Josh did, you're going to find yourself in a much better position. But so many focus on the money right up front. And I always kind of equate it to, if you were at a 4-year school, you'd be paying to go to school. And here you are, you're getting paid, even though it's less than you probably would have liked. Yeah. You're getting paid to learn, and as hands-on as it gets, right? But it came from your willingness to be able to sacrifice money up front. And I think that's such an important piece to understand.
Yeah, it's definitely an investment on the technician side, that you've got to be willing to sacrifice that. And unfortunately, some situations people can't afford to do that. They have families. I understand that. But if I was a young technician ever coming out of the industry, the second I walked in that shop and had my bearings, so not the first day, but give it a couple of months. Once you feel comfortable, go do something that makes you uncomfortable. Pull an engine, pull a transmission, do a job that nobody else wants, because if you get good at those, then you're going to be making money at the stuff that everybody wants. It's just how it works.
And for your manager to give you that flexibility as well, not put so much pressure on you to, hey, book time was this and you didn't get it done on time, but rather sit back and say, hey, this kid is working his tail off. We stay in extra hours. He's doing the things needed to become a successful tech, and not just throw hours in your face all the time. I think that's an excellent way to start somebody off on flat rate. So you're not just, sink or swim. Hey, they're not putting out hours. We got to move on. Being patient is so important from a manager. Can you tell me a little bit about how important that piece was to you?
Yeah, I mean, something I didn't realize at the time, because, I'm focused on myself. I'm young. I'm just trying to hit my goal, right? But looking back now, the sacrifice that came from management, Brian Carter specifically, is just huge. Number one, I wasn't trained to, or probably ready to be working on those jobs, but he let me do it anyway. And luckily I got away with a few mistakes, but, they happen. The other thing is, he wasn't pushing me constantly about, hey, you need to make this set quota of hours. I still produced a high amount, but like I said, I was throwing in a lot of overtime and everything like that. So he wasn't worried about the efficiency of me. He was just wanting me to grow and progress. And he definitely had to wait a long time for me to be the technician that I am today. But now I'm able to go that and bestow that upon the people, that I'm training up. And hopefully it's going to be a worthwhile investment for him. Because I wouldn't have been able to have the career that I have and the time that I have without his support 100% of the way.
Well, when you say long time, that's pretty relative, right? Because in the grand scheme of things, that's not that long of a time to be patient.
Yeah.
That's the part that I think when I'm reading a book right now by Simon Sinek called, I think it's The Infinite Game. And it talks about how when you're so focused on numbers, you are driving some form of negative culture, right? If that's the only thing you're worried about, all you're worried about is your monthly P&L, you're going to force somebody like yourself into a bad position, because you're going to try and rush that person to get to a productivity level that's acceptable. When in reality, it takes some time, and it's not going to happen overnight. And I do think there's some light bulb moments where things click with a tech. I've seen a lot of young techs where, they struggle, but if they're working hard, all of a sudden you see kind of that light bulb click, and then things start to come easier. But it takes a while, and every person is different. Every young person, and not to pick on young people, but that's kind of what I always saw was, it comes for people at different lengths of time, and being able to understand that and knowing that, hey, you know what? If you've got a good person, they show up to work, they have a good attitude, they seem to be working their tails off, give them patience, give them time to grow and mature, because that will pay off tenfold in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. We put a lot into our people. And like I said, Carter he doesn't have the mindset of I'm a number to him. He truly cares about where I go in this industry, and he is pushing me to my highest limits. I have 10 ASCs of right now, and he still wants me to get 3 more. He expects it, he pushes it. And it's a constant reminder, it's a weekly touch in and say, hey, have you got that ASC yet? It's kind of a joke, but he does constantly just push you to the highest level. And there's been times where in the middle of my career that there's kind of a little bit of a lull between expert technician and master technician, mostly because you have to have 5 years experience to get that level. So there was about a year in there where there was no progression for me. There wasn't any training. I had completed all of it. I was just waiting for the time to take over. And I got stagnant at that time, and he had sat me down over different conversations, and he made it very clear that if you stay stagnant, number one, you're either going to fail at the career, or you're just not going to continue to push and grow, and you won't see the money continue to increase. And I see that in a lot of technicians now, is that once there's that progression lull, that they just kind of lose the drive for it. And if you lose the drive for it in flat rate, you lose your money, and then you're just going to switch out of the industry or go get a different job or try to hire somewhere else.
Technicians, are you looking for a new job? Even if you're just casually looking, you need to check out Reverse Job Posts. Reverse Job Posts flips the traditional job board around. You can now fill out a short questionnaire and let shops reach out to you with job opportunities. No resume needed. The best part is all of your contact info remains anonymous until you're ready to share it. It's a great way to explore new job opportunities, and it's completely free to use. To create a Reverse Job Post, simply download the free WrenchWay mobile app or visit WrenchWay.com and click on the Reverse Job Post link. We've also included some links in the show notes.
Any advice to one of those techs that's out there listening right now that might have plateaued or be kind of feeling like they're stuck in that rut and not sure what their next step should be?
So for me, what I found was I talked to a bunch of people. I want to give a shout out to a couple FTSs, both on the Subaru side, Nathan Brooksby, and then Jay on the Toyota side.
Love Jay.
Yeah, Jay's great. I talked to them both about how I was kind of frustrated with some progression issues, and they were just blatantly honest with me and said that it's part on me, but they would also look for an opportunity for me to move up, and they've helped me line up where I go, and it just really helped to talk it out and find a path. Because at the end of the day, if there's nothing on the Toyota side that I can go up, maybe I can find something in the shop that I can improve on. Which kind of, when I hit that lull, what I did was I focused down on my multi-point inspections, because it's something that I think is overlooked by some younger technicians, but the importance of it. So I think it was 2020 year hit, and I was like, I'm going to do the best multi-points on every single car that came in the door. I didn't realize what I was doing. I was just doing it because I was trying to find something to give me a goal. But what I realized after I started doing that was how much money came in because of that. Doing a quality multi-point inspection, taking pictures, because we have X time, which is fantastic. And now what I do is I actually do videos of walking around the car and talking to the customers about the different things I see. And all of this has progressed me to be a better technician, do a more thorough job, and also bring in more money just off the flat rate system. So it's been great.
What a different attitude than a lot of technicians have, right? When you look at an MPI, there's a lot that are like, why am I doing this? This doesn't seem right, or this doesn't seem like a good use of my time. But you took a different approach and really looked at it from the standpoint of, I need to get good at this. Where do you start with that? With saying, I need to do a better multi-point inspection? Is it just doing it more thoroughly on all the checkpoints, or is it, I'm curious because I don't hear that very often, right?
Yeah, no, I understand. From the technician standpoint, it makes zero sense, right? Spend more time on something that's free, because it is free at the end of the day. Your flat rate, you don't get paid for it. But as far as how I did it, I basically would, so let's say before 2020, my inspection would be 10 minutes. And, it wouldn't be thorough, but I would find breaks, stuff that we'd want to sell. After 2020, when I started taking it a lot more serious, I looked at everything, whether it be wipers, bulbs, there's maybe a little bit of a seep going on, maybe the battery has some corrosion. I looked at everything and I documented everything. And then luckily we had X time added in at that same time, so I was able to take pictures and then also give us a reason as to why I would recommend something. And it's not like it's going to happen in one day. You're not going to get good at it. But what happened was, as I started to add on to my list of things and take a little more time, I was creating this huge, thorough inspection, slowly but surely. And nowadays, it's just nature to me. And I can do it in about 20 minutes with a video, pictures, everything like that. So, it just practice makes perfect. And then I promise you, in probably a year or two, I'll find something else that I'm going to just drill into and try to progress on.
It reminds me so much of athletes, right? You always heard how Kobe Bryant would always in the off season add another skill. So he's working on his post game, and even though he's not really a post player, but then that took it to the next level, or work on shooting, whatever. And I love the way that you're kind of almost picking yourself apart and saying, okay, I wasn't doing a good inspection. So what am I going to do a good inspection? And it's like a paradigm shift in your own head where you're like, I'm taking this serious. I'm going to do this differently. And it sounds like it's paid off big time for you.
Yeah, it works really well. I've been super excited by the customer response from it. Like, they love those videos. The direct technician, it's like me going out into the drive and talking to the customer. So I've seen that works really well. And the great thing is I've started, having the people that I'm training try it out as well. And to watch the evolution of how a different person does it a different way, it's been super cool. Like, some people talk to the customer and using their name directly. Some people like say goodbye. Like, they add their little flair to it, and it's just super cool to watch the progression of the video changing and everything like that.
It helps you brand yourself as a technician too, right? They get to know you and they get to see your face, right?
Yeah, we had a meeting up at Toyota headquarters about a year ago now, and it was a service quality specialist. It's a position they're trying to get going in stores. One of the things we talked about is business cards, right? Because everyone hands out business cards. They see everything like that. We have at the shop business cards, and sometimes I'd put a business card in a customer's car and then sign it and then put like a little thank you for coming to our thing. That works, but also business cards are a dime a dozen. So with the video thing, what we've been kind of doing is a business card ending where you start with an introduction, introducing yourself, your status, and then at the end, you're going to say, goodbye, thanks for coming to Toyota of Corvallis, or, add a personal flair. And if that customer is returning, we try to make sure that we mention that in the video so that they know they're a customer of ours. So it's been unique and super cool.
It reframes you as a total professional then too, right? And I think that's one thing that in talking with technicians, techs get really frustrated with is that, maybe, we don't get the recognition we deserve. We don't get, the credit to the customer that we feel like that we're needing or that we desire. And it's funny to me because I think this message that you're saying here is so impactful to any technician that's out there in the importance of representing yourself as a professional. I know the ladies on our marketing team just put a TikTok video out that talked about how to dress for an interview and got destroyed in the comments of it, right? And it was because they were wearing slacks and a button-up shirt, and all of the comments are like, if I want a job, I'll just go in and I'll go in with my work uniform. And my frustration with the comments were that, yes, you can do that. You can go in your work clothes and dirty and whatever and get a job. But don't come talking to me about how you want more respect, or don't come talking to me about how you want to be known as a professional when all I see are these comments just killing our marketing team on that. And to me, it's such low-hanging fruit for us as an industry to improve and for technicians to improve their name if they handle this, just a little bit differently and look at it through a different lens. Don't just try to be the old school mechanic, because the old school mechanics didn't get paid anything, right? Like, I think this is it's time to change. And it's for me, I'm venting a little bit here, but it was so frustrating to see the comments, because it is something where we're trying to make this a better career for all technicians, but technicians have to come to the table a little bit too.
I think professionalism is definitely something that's going to be changing as far as a technician. Number one, clean uniform, looking good, presentable. And like I said, I think we're going to have more customer interaction as this career goes on. I know from the dealer standpoint, you got to think we have a bunch of service advisors. So as far as customer to technician interaction, most of the time they're only seeing my X time report from me with my name on it. There's not really me ever talking to them unless they specifically request or we need to go on a test drive. But in the future, I'm sure that service advisor position is going to change and may be a completely different position in the future where I'm interacting with customers more, because at the independents, most of the time, the smaller ones, they have that mom and pop feel, and the customers like that connection with the mechanic because they know that person on their vehicle is trustworthy and they can see him face to face. There's nothing hidden. And I think in the dealership, that's what we can bring to the table, is if we build that relationship with our customers so that, it feels like that small shop feel in that big shop. So that's what we're trying to do here, is kind of give them that personalized touch, make sure that we're building a relationship with them and know that we're trustworthy, because unfortunately the dealerships they're notorious for bad reputations. Yeah.
And I think there's a lot as technicians that we can do to kind of change that narrative. And I think that's where it starts. Now, one of the really cool things, and this is really segueing to our topic of conversation, is, we're talking about the value of a technician and how technicians can help that out. Now, you had developed a tool on your own to be able to really track your time and understand what type of billable hours you're putting out, and really being able to kind of take control of that, just so you have checks and balances on your own end, right?
Yeah. So one of the things with any improvement that you're going to make, you have to have data on it. That's the biggest thing, right? So when I was starting out, one of the technicians had told me, always track your hours. Now, his reason was a little bit different than what I'm going to talk about today, because his was, you want to make sure you're getting paid, because people will undercut you sometimes. And that's not intentional, but it happens in this industry. People make mistakes. So you want to make sure that your paycheck lines up with what you're expecting. But here's the cool thing. Since I have all this data, since day one that I've started, I've been able to watch my progression as far as the data goes, because I can see a whole different picture. When I first started, like I said, I didn't make a lot of hours. I was working on a ton of cars because I didn't know how to do a good NPI, all of that. About year 3, when I made that switch to that multi-point inspection and started changing, what I saw was my car count going down and my hours staying up, or consistent or going up. And what that showed me was that my multi-point inspections are getting better, because I'm working on less cars and I'm also flagging more hours. I'm selling more work per car that comes in. Now you go 5 years in advance, and what we've seen is that I have a low car count and I have a high hour count. And I've improved my efficiency as a technician. I'm working less hours and making more money. All this wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't started tracking my hours and then using that data to know where I'm at.
I think it's very innovative. And one thing I want to point out is, I think a lot of times, so for folks that might not love flat rate, what they'll say is, well, you're just overcharging a customer, or you're coming up with repairs that they don't need. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think what it is when you're doing a thorough inspection, you're helping the customer out drastically, because you don't want them going out and getting pulled over because the light bulb's out, or you don't want them getting stuck in a storm with the rubber hanging off of their windshield wiper. I think that peace of mind that comes with a thorough inspection and knowing that your vehicle is going to run correctly, and it's ultimately going to cost them less money, because they're not going to have to put some crazy expensive part on because they maintained it right. I think that narrative is maybe a little bit off amongst the general consumer. Am I off base there?
No, I mean, some people get frustrated with it when you do a thorough NPI, because all they see is the dollar amount, right? But at the end of the day, my job is to look your vehicle over and let you know everything wrong with it. Whether that be that your mirror is damaged or, your engine is leaking oil. My job is to present you with those facts. And then from there, your decisions can be made on what you need to do. Obviously, if you have a safety issue, I'm going to warn you that, hey, that could be a big issue down the road. Your tire's about to fall off, or you have no tread. But there are minor things that aren't as important, but it's still my job to present those facts to you. I take it very seriously that every vehicle that comes in my stall has everything listed that is needed. And I know that doesn't work for some customers, and it might not work in an independent shop, but here at the dealership, our job is to, keep that vehicle as close to factory and as close to brand new as possible.
Well, it's not any different than what a doctor does, right? If you go in for a physical, a doctor is going to tell you what is not right with you, and that's just general practice. And I think we battle from behind a little bit in terms of back in the day when there was quite a few shady shops out there that were recommending work that wasn't necessarily needed or making it up. I know I've heard horror stories, and you saw the old like 60 Minutes or 2020 specials about shady mechanics, and I just don't think it's out there anymore as much, or at least not that I see. But I do think it hurts us from an industry standpoint that when there was that shady piece, and not to say there aren't shady shops out there, there's still shady shops out there, but I don't think it's nearly as many. But when that happened and it brought a light to our industry, it put a negative connotation on us, right? And it stings because so much of it wasn't of our doing.
Yeah, it was definitely a highlight of a very, I think, small percentage of what gets done. But like I said, the best thing we can do is be open. We use our video tools, our picture tools to show what we're recommending. If your brakes are low, we're going to take a picture of it so you can see for yourself. And using those tools to build that trust and relationship back is super important for our industry. And like I said, in the future, I think it's going to all shift to that because it's just open and, we're not hiding anything. So more trustworthy.
That's great insight.
Thank you, Diesel Laptops, for being a sponsor of Beyond the Wrench. Founded in 2015, Diesel Laptops originally set out to help clients with their diagnostic tool needs. Since then, they have expanded into a full-service shop efficiency solution company, offering diagnostic tools, diesel technician training, repair information, parts lookup tools, and more. If Diesel Laptops would be a solution you would like to add to your shop, check out diesellaptops.com to learn more.
Right, so let's get back to your tool that you've built.
Yes.
So you are tracking your hours. Now, are you doing it per job code, or are you like how give me an idea how this works?
Okay, so for every vehicle that comes in, we have an RO, repair order. That's pretty standard, I think, across the industry. And it has the VIN, and we're also going to bill out how many hours that we made on it. So basically, my tracker, I put in the RO information, the VIN information, and then how many hours I'm expecting off of it. Now, one other thing that I do, since we're a split shop, is I track Toyota and Subaru just to know which brand I'm working on, percentage-wise. And then an independent shop, that would be a nightmare to track. But that just helps me create data. From that, I'm able to compile, how many RO counts I've had based on how many numbers I punch in, how many hours per RO that I'm making, and also a percentage of warranty to customer pay. And all that data adding up really tells a story over a period of time. It may not show you in a month what's really happening, but over 5 years, what I've been able to see is that I've slowly progressed from maybe being 80% customer pay to 20% warranty to more of a 40% to 60% warranty. Now, to a technician, that can be frustrating because they're like, man, I'm getting paid less for more work. But what it shows is that my career is progressing. Basically, as I move up the ranks, I'm seeing more warranty work, but that doesn't mean my pay is less. And that also, like I said before, my RO count has gone down. So I'm doing less work for more money. Without that information, there can be a lot of frustration on the technician side. But the cool thing about this tool is that I use it to pitch to management when it's time for a raise, right? Because where my growth is coming from. So I'm doing warranty work and I'm making you more money. And I'm able to show him that through a course of a year. I can go into his office, and when he asks me, what have you done this year to deserve a raise, I can show the progression of my career and really how far I've come and what I'm doing to increase and improve my efficiency.
So you're speaking with data, and I love that. Now, the one question I would have is there this information available in a dealer management system, or is it like where you're pulling the data out of a DMS, or is it something where you're just manually tracking it all the time? Give me an idea of how you get the data.
So we have some of this data available in what's called Dealer Track for us, which is like a product of X time. They're all kind of together. That gives me the VIN and RO. The thing is, a lot of these companies don't provide a technician tool for tracking their hours. So what I did was created an Excel sheet to allow me to do this and track this manually. So I do have to punch in, the RO number, and then I copy and paste the VIN. It takes, 10 seconds now.
Yeah.
Obviously, when I started, it was a little rough to get in the habit, but once you do it enough, just like with anything, you get better at doing it. And it became like a second nature. Not only do I know the exact money that my paycheck is going to tell me, but I also have tools to know, what kind of month I had. Maybe I worked on a lot more warranty, but did I still make the same amount of money? How's my RO count to the work? Am I doing a lot more cars? Does my inspections not as good? I can monitor all that just by looking at the data. And this is what a manager looks at, because these guys are number crunchers. You don't become a service manager without being a number cruncher. So there's that discommunication between the technician and the service manager because they're looking at two different things. The technician doesn't talk in numbers, they talk in hours, and a service manager talks in numbers. So I think this tool kind of helps me, like I said, pitch to management what I bring to the table. And so I have my data and he has his data, and we can sit down and talk about it.
And how reflective is the data? I mean, when you come to the table with your own data, is it matching what your manager is seeing?
So the funny enough, a lot of the software like the Dealer Track and Xtime, they don't track the technician information as specific as I do. So sometimes I'll actually have more than he will. He knows my hours, gross profit, everything like that. But he also doesn't know my RO count all the time, and he also doesn't know how many hours I'm producing RO. So this information, like I said, their software is pitching to a service manager. They're not thinking about a technician. So me having my own tool really helps me sell the other side of the story. And it's usually pretty accurate. It can be a little bit off because, like I said, mistakes happen. But usually at the end of the month, I'm dead on.
How cool is it to look back at your historical data now that you've built up over 5 years or, however long you've been doing this? How cool is it to look back through the data?
Oh, it's super cool because, like I said, I can sit there and I can remember that year where the changes happened and my mindset, my ability and everything like that. I can see it just in the data itself. Like I said, I was able to tell when I made that MPI switch because, it's in there in the data because my car count drops off. It almost halved and I was still producing the same amount of hours. So it's really cool to have that all the way back to the 5 years that I started. And I'm looking forward in, 3 more years to see where I'm at. I can only imagine tracking over like 25 years. If you had just the improvement alone would be nuts.
Oh, and how cool would it be to look back over the years, as you build your experience and year after year, being able to look back and say, okay, I did this, and
yeah.
Being able to, even the part where you're kind of earmarking where you made changes so you can see what had an impact, maybe what didn't have as much of an impact, and just continually kind of hone in on what's going to make you a better technician.
Yeah, it's definitely like scientific data. Any experiment they monitor so they know, is it working or is it not? And I can see that big time showing up. And it's something that, like I said, any new guy in the shop, I tell him track his data. And, it doesn't have to be an advanced program right out of the gate. But the thing is, once you have that data, in 5 years, I'd love to take him to go back to when he started and really show him the progress because it was super cool to see that for me. And it made me feel a lot better when I felt like I was having a bad month to look back and see, hey, it's not that bad. I'm still making progress in some ways.
That's cool. Anything that you left off when you first started tracking data that you added later on?
So I didn't track RO numbers right out of the way. I would definitely recommend that because it would be so cool to see the RO count from the very start. Because I started as second year in, but not that first year. And I really would have liked to see how many cars I was just working on, a month to produce just the amount of hours that I'm able to do pretty easily now. And then the other thing was the tracking of the brand. I would like to know which brand I work on more because we are a dual brand. Right now I'm about 50-50, but there was definitely a time where I worked on more Subarus and, less Toyotas. So it's been cool.
And it would be, from a teaching standpoint, be cool to take that data back to an entry-level tech and say, hey, listen, this is where I started at. This is the data that, shows that I got my butt kicked for a year or two before that I made that transition to being a productive tech.
Yeah, my apprentice, he likes looking through that and makes him feel a little bit better about when he's starting out, because he sees my stuff now, and it's different. So he likes looking back and seeing it. I've showed it to him, and I said, this is where I started, and I understand. So yeah.
Well, there's got to be so much encouragement behind that, though, too. If you look at Josh's numbers as a first-year tech, and granted, you're under his wing right now, and you're putting out all kinds of ridiculously good work. But then for that person, that young person that might be getting discouraged because they, screwed up a job, or they are getting killed on time.
Yeah.
Like, to be able to see what your history was and how you progressed. I mean, for me, it just paints a visual that, hey, I can get there. Even though I got my butt kicked today, I can get there.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing with flat rate, is not letting a day or a bad week really just affect your whole month, because a lot of this game is mental as far as flat rate. If you're not ready to go and in it 100%, it will cost you money at the end of the day. And I've seen some technicians lose to that. That's why tracking your hours is a good thing for you, because it reminds you of the overall pattern. It's not just zoomed in on one day or 1 week. It's the whole month or a whole year. And it just helps you keep focused that you just need to keep going even when it's rough.
What was your driver to start doing it? I know we kind of talked about that, but when you wanted to track your time up front, what was the one thing that kind of pushed you over the edge to say, okay, I'm tracking my hours all the time now?
So when I was flat rate, I really wanted to track so that I knew my paycheck, because at the end of the day, you don't really know. I mean, yeah, you can kind of have a guesstimate. You're like, I feel like I had a really good week. Turns out you did like 20 hours. So it's important, having that flat rate pay, that you're keeping track of it, so you can keep your bills in line and everything like that. As I progressed throughout my career, it's stayed pretty consistent. So like that first starting out, man, make or break in a day. You can be doing like 13 hours, and then the next day you're like 2 hours. And I see that with a lot of apprentices, is there that fluctuation when you're first flat rate, it's going to go like crazy, and you're going to be like, man, this is rough. And then some days you'll be like, I'm making so much money.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you see, like, as you move forward with this data collection from a technician standpoint, do you see other opportunities to be able to use it, or be able to maybe even enhance the type of data that you put in there?
Yeah, so I've tried to add in different things, such as like what type of work I'm doing. So am I doing a heavy line job? Am I doing a maintenance service? Different things like that, so that I can isolate even more as I progress as a technician what kind of work I'm doing. Because a master technician usually isn't doing a maintenance service. That's usually saved for the lower levels. I'm doing more electrical diagnosis and different things like that. I think having that portion of data in there really will help isolate to the shop owner what kind of work you're doing as a master technician, because at the end of the day, the reason that you're getting paid the big bucks is because you're taking on those harder jobs and still producing money for the shop. And a service manager may not see that data. That's not anywhere in their system, because to them it doesn't really matter. A car is a car, right? A number is a number. So you need to sell what your value is to the dealership or the shop, and what you're doing as a master technician. So I think that's a super cool thing to track. And like I said, a big thing for when you progress into your career.
What has management's response been to this, in terms of, are they think it's cool? Do they think it's terrifying? Like, give me an idea of where they stand.
Yeah. Well, luckily I have a pretty good manager. He knows me by now. He knows where I'm going and how much I push for stuff. So he's used to it. Maybe at first it was a little new, but I think he appreciates it now, because he knows that my numbers are true, and it's a good reference. I don't know how another shop would take it, because when you're confronting somebody, you really have to prove that you have the right data and everything like that. But if you're consistent and you show RO information and VIN information, it's all there on paper. And hopefully a service manager would see the value that you're bringing in.
And not only that, you're showing the initiative to want to get better. And this isn't, I don't think the way that you've approached this is in a gotcha type of way, where you're trying to catch the dealer on screwing you over on flat rate, where I think when you're looking at it and you're truly trying to refine your craft, and you're trying to really figure out what you can do to improve your livelihood. I don't know. I think if I were to put myself in a manager's shoes and a tech is doing that, I think it'd be pretty cool. And I'd want to learn more about it and try to figure out, hey, what are you doing? Like, give me some insight into why you're doing this and how you're doing this. And really, I think it could be a really cool conversation driver between the technician and the manager.
Yeah, it's definitely a conversation starter. I always send Brian, what kind of month I had. I like to keep him updated and say the kind of work I had. And maybe my hours were a little bit lower, but here's exactly why, because I can see the jobs that I have, the warranty percentage, and just what I'm doing. And the other thing is this allows me to look over a year, and I can tell which months we're going to be a little bit slower and which ones are going to be busier. And maybe there's a month that's different than that. But it just gives you that overall trend. It's everything that a manager does, but it's important for a technician to do it too.
Does it help you from the standpoint of being able to budget or plan your personal expenses and really how you run your personal life?
So nowadays, since I'm pretty consistent on how I go, it's more of a gradual change up and down with hours. But when it first started, it was huge because, like I said, I just didn't know how a day was going to go because you do a job that you've never done before. You don't know if you're going to make money at it or if you're just going to make a mistake and then cost you. So for young technicians, I think it's super important, just the financial side of things. For senior technicians, it's not really to track your hours at that point. It's more to track what your career is doing and how it's changing.
I can't help but think it would be great from a technician standpoint at taking away some of the anxiety, right? The anxiety of the unknown. And, we related a lot to a tech not knowing their career path, but this is more of an immediate, like direct, hey, this is what I'm putting out. This is what I'm going to get paid. And the more you feel certain about that, I think, ahead of time, and it's not some anxiety where you just, I think the fear of the unknown drives so much anxiety in everybody's lives in general. And this is a way of just kind of that reassurance of, this is what I'm going to take home.
Yeah. In the industry, it's definitely one of the more stressful parts of being flat rate is not knowing what you're going to make. So this kind of helps alleviate that. And at least get a ballpark idea of where you're going to be. And like I said, in the industry, this isn't something that's sold. There's no product for it. So just developing it on a quick Excel sheet, it's been great.
That's cool. It is really, really cool. Now, we've got about 10 minutes left. I want to talk a little bit about your openness to being on video. I think we talked about the inspections. When we sat through that WrenchWay workshop out in Portland, I think you were so open to doing video, and you were already doing video to kind of show off what you're doing in the shop every day. I want to get a little bit into your brain here as to why you feel like it's important and why you feel so comfortable doing it.
Well, I definitely didn't right off the gate because by the time I got to that workshop, I was already 3 months into doing videos for customers. But man, that first day that I tried to do it was pretty rough. I did like 20 takes. Keep in mind, this is like a 1-minute video, and all I'm doing is just walking around a car and showing, and then trying to explain to the customer. But yeah, it was a nightmare at first, and you're nervous about it. I've usually been pretty comfortable about outgoing. I go to schools and talk to students and stuff like that. So I've done that before. But on video, it can be a little bit different. But as you do something, you get better at it. That's just how it works. And also the videos, I don't include a picture of my face talking. I'm showing the car and I'm visually pointing to different things. So that makes it a lot easier. But let me tell you, getting some of these younger guys to try to do these videos, they're definitely a little hesitant of being on camera. And like I said, practice makes perfect. I think it's important to have the video aspect because what is the saying, right? A picture shows 1,000 words. What's a video then? It's millions, because it's honest. It's right in front of you. It's not just a snapshot. It's what's actually going on. So I think it's important to build that relationship with that customer. And that's why I started doing it, was to, like I said, give that business card ending and build a relationship with them and show that openness in the shop.
How do you think this is going to impact your recruiting moving forward? And we rarely on the podcast talk about WrenchWay, but this was something where when we were talking, it seemed like you kind of understood it maybe even more than most, right? Where the power of video when it comes to trying to attract new talent to your shop. Talk to me about what your feeling is on that, and maybe do you think it's a big deal? Do you think it's just a nice supplement? Like, give me an idea of what you think there.
I think it's pretty cool to see the life of a technician. And I was thinking back when we went through that workshop when I started 5 years ago, how cool it would have been to see all the shops in the area and see what you're walking into. Because I'll be honest, I didn't know at all what I was walking into. So, the way that we've been using our WrenchWay page is to try to provide that peek in, like, what we had talked about in the meeting. And it's super cool to be able to do short little videos. And I really like showing off like big engine jobs. And one of our guys just like bent over an engine and it's just like a mess of parts. And you're like, it just looks super cool because, that's what a mechanic is doing. It's a cool job at the end of the day. You get to do some sweet stuff. And so much of it isn't shown, or when it is shown, it's usually in a negative context with, bad things. So I like to show the cool things that we do, and just the people diving into their career. Also tools, got to show off the tools.
Well, what I love about it though, and like going back to the earlier conversation that we had, was talking about how intimidating it is to walk into any shop, let alone some massive dealership, as a young person. And it feels like we talk about anxiety that can drive a lot of anxiety. And I always talk about it from the standpoint of it's hard to even find a spot to park at a lot of dealerships, let alone like try to understand who you're supposed to talk to. But if you see those, those people talking on video, and I see Josh out there, and you know what, Josh doesn't seem that intimidating. Like, it seems like Josh is a pretty nice guy. It gives you some sense of familiarity with that person before you even meet them. And I think that is so important in our industry, because we do have an intimidating industry. It's not the easiest one just to walk in, and you know it better than anybody. You walked in as green as could be, and it can be really, really intimidating.
Yeah, there was a lot of days where I was questioning my decision, but luckily I stuck with it. But yeah, no, it can be super intimidating for a guy. So I think showing off and showing the guys that it's a job at the end of the day, but we can still have a lot of fun doing it, and we get to work on some cool stuff and play around with tools all day. There's a lot of perks to this job, and like I said, a lot of it seems to be a lot of negative around it most of the time. So hopefully we're changing that.
I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job at it. For that technician or that manager or whoever it is that's terrified of getting on video, do you have any advice for them on how to get comfortable with it? How to really build an audience, if you will? But let me take that back. When I say that, so many people are so uneasy about creating video. What is some good advice for them to just get started?
I mean, honestly, I think you just got to hit the button. You're not going to do it perfect. My videos that I do around the car, I leave in my mistakes, because at the end of the day, that's what makes it genuine. People make mistakes, little slur words, and there's a lot of different things like that. So just hit that button, go out and do it, and see how it turns out. It's not going to be good at the start, but just keep working at it, just like anything else, and you'll get better at it. So
I think if you go out to their WrenchWay page, and maybe we'll put a link to that in the show notes, but you just did a walk around of the Subaru's training center, right? Being able to just go check that out.
Yeah, so basically I just walked around the building and kind of showed off what we were doing, told them that it's like a little vacation, because you get to go up to Portland and, hang out for 2 days, get all your food paid for, and you get to learn stuff. And we were tearing apart like an engine. And, it's just fun to go to those classes. You're increasing your status as a technician, and it's a break from doing the same thing over and over. So, yeah, it was nice of them to let me show it off. And I'm hoping to get the Toyota one shown off here pretty soon, too.
That is awesome. And I think if you put yourself in the shoes of another technician, it's pretty cool to see that, right? Because not everybody gets to go to that specific training center. Not everybody gets to see kind of behind the scenes. And what you've done when you're doing that is kind of peeling back the curtain a little bit, right? You're just you're allowing them to see a day in the life of Josh Arnold and why it's a pretty cool career. And I think it not only helps you guys from a recruiting standpoint, I do think it helps lift the industry up as a whole. I think it is a really, really great thing that you're doing out there.
Yeah, I think it's important for technicians to see, all the progression that is in this career. And like I said, it's just, there's a lot of opportunity in here that you probably don't know about until you dive in. And hopefully we're going to show the different levels, how you get there and how you do it, all on our page and everything else.
Well, this has been a really fun conversation. This hour absolutely flew by, and I think I learned a lot. I love your story. I love how you came from really no background in the automotive business to now being a master level technician. And in a fairly short amount of time, I think you are an extremely good representation of what you can do in this industry and really the good of the industry. I as you mentioned, I think a lot of times we focus on the negative, and you do one heck of a good job representing not only Toyota of Corvallis, but yourself and technicians as a whole in such a positive light. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jay. I appreciate the WrenchWay app. It's been great to work with it.
Awesome. All right, we'll have you on again sometime soon.
Yep, sounds good.
Thank you, Josh.